Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Indo-American Art Council Literary Festival. We are on our Children's Day at the festival, and there's a phenomenal lineup, as always, at the IAAC's festivals. And today, I want to introduce to you a fantastic author, Kate McGovern. She's the author of The Rules for 50/50 Chances, which was called a standout contemporary read by Booklist. She also writes essays and plays. The New York Times once called a play she wrote a quirky, personable little one act with a warm heart. She's lived for some years in New York, where she taught theater. Now she lives with her family in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Welcome, Kate.
Hi,
So
thanks so much for having me.
thank you so much, and so nice to see you here. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in the festival.
Thank you.
Talking with her today, in the session will be Rajani LaRocca. Rajani, born in India, raised in Kentucky, and now living in the Boston area. Rajani practices medicine and writes award-winning books for young readers. A writer of fiction and nonfiction, novels, picture books, prose, and poetry. She finds inspiration in her family, her childhood, the natural world, math, science, and just about everywhere she looks. Welcome, Rajani. Um, so nice to have you join us today.
Hey, thank you.
Rajani will be in conversation with Kate about her book. And I'm not revealing any further details because I know there's so much that you both want to talk. And one interesting thing, Rajani also, besides being a prolific writer and a doctor, she also co-hosts the STEM Women in Kidlit podcast. So that's very interesting, and I'm going to talk to you offline more about that later. But as of now, I'm going to leave the floor open to you both to have a conversation. Look forward to hearing it, and look forward for my young ones to read the books that you've both written. Thank you so much.
Hi, Kate.
Hi,
I'm
Rajani.
so excited to be here talking
Good
to
to
you
see
about.
you.
Yes, it's good to see you too. I'm so excited to talk about your latest book. Welcome back, Maple
Yay.
Mehta-Cohen. Yay! I love this book. It is middle grade. So can you please tell us like what age range it's for, give us a little description of the book, and do a reading?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for joining me today too, Rajani. Rajani and I actually know each other from when we were in a writing class way back before either of us was a published author. So it's always a treat to get to reconnect with you and talk about books. Like you said, my newest book is called Welcome Back, Maple Mehta-Cohen, and it is a middle grade novel, which means it's for readers who are about 8 to 12 years old. And this book is about a 5th grade girl named Maple. Maple is from a mixed family. She's half Indian, half Jewish, which also reflects the makeup of my own family. So that's a little bit of where that inspiration came from. And Maple is being held back in 5th grade to do a second year in 5th grade because her teachers have recently diagnosed her with a reading disability. Part of the reason that she got all the way to 5th grade without her teachers or her family really recognizing the struggles that she was having with reading, or that Maple is really good at hiding this from people. Maple is a really smart kid. She loves stories. She even loves making up stories of her own, and she loves listening to books and reading books with her parents. But she really struggles with reading on her own independently, and it's something that I think she has felt a little bit embarrassed about, and felt really kind of like she didn't want to talk about it with anyone. And she had all these tricks for kind of cleverly hiding it when she was in school. And so it's just when she's in 5th grade and she has a new teacher who's really observant and really paying attention to what she's doing in class that this sort of comes to light. And her school makes the decision to hold her back, not advance her to 6th grade, and hold her back in 5th grade again. And so Maple is really struggling with this. She feels really bummed out that her friends are going on to 6th grade without her. And she's kind of figuring out what that all means for her and how she's going to navigate 5th grade for the second time around. And that's kind of where we start in the beginning of the book. And I would love to read a little section. This is from fairly early in the book. She is on her first day of 5th grade for the second time. And she has just been introduced by her teacher to another kid who is new in the class this year. He's new to the school. His name is Jack. And Maple's teacher has asked her to kind of be like a tour guide to Jack, show him the ropes, show him around school for the first day. So she's back in school, and she's kind of having to deal with this new kid who's hanging around her, and she's not so sure that she like really wants to be his friend, but she's trying to show him around and be cool. So that's where we are right now. The cafeteria is a minefield. The 5th and 6th grades always have the same lunch, which means as I make my way down the hall, the drone of 150 kids slamming plastic trays on tables and screeching at each other is a warning of what's to come. 150 opportunities for humiliation. Jack, of course, has no idea. He trails a few paces behind me in the hallway, then periodically does a little skip hop to catch up and ask me something. Hey, so Mabel, have you been here since kindergarten? Is there a pizza option every day? What's your favorite subject, Maple? 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 I give him the shortest answers I can get away with. Yes to kindergarten, no to pizza only on Fridays, and it's gluten-free crust. Favorite subject? I ignore that one entirely. It used to be language arts. I used to consider myself, a word person. But you can't really be a word person if you can't read. So now I'm not sure what my favorite subject is. Do I have to be good at math now? Nothing against numbers. I mean, I like a good fraction, but being a math person isn't really part of my personal brand. In the cafeteria, sunlight glints through the floor-to-ceiling windows and spills bold stripes across the linoleum. It doesn't take me more than 30 seconds to spot Ashlyn and Marigold at one of the unofficial middle school tables at the far end of the room. They're the sun-drenched window seats with a view of the playground. You have to pay your dues before you can sit there. And I did. I paid. My friends already have their trays and are sitting with Lucy Jones and Fatima Ulum. Neither was in our class last year, but they could both be considered cool. Lucy plays a team sport every season, and Fatima dances in point shoes. You can't not want to be friends with them. If I were in 6th grade, I'd already be friends with them by association, thanks to my history with Ashlyn and Marigold. Instead, I'm standing here on the other side of the cafeteria holding an empty tray when Marigold looks up. We lock eyes and I freeze. The tray slips from my sweat-slicked hands and clatters to the floor. For a moment, I think she looks almost sorry. Then she turns away. They're laughing together in a way that suggests shared secrets and jokes that aren't funny to anyone else. I see Ashlyn twist her thick blonde hair into a messy bun and clip it effortlessly to the top of her head. Marigold has new braids, like she said she would, fresh for the start of the school year. Micros, she called them when she told me her plan. They're long and thin with the bottoms in loose curls that trail down her back. She's perfect. They all are. My chest aches. Hey, here. Jack's holding my tray. You okay? I'd almost forgotten my charge. Fine, I say, grabbing it from him. We make our way through the buffet line, loading up with bowls of chili, limp salad, and green apples. He takes a carton of milk and I grab a water. With our trays full, I hesitate. Most of the 5th graders are sitting at the tables closer to the hallway, while the 6th graders occupy the better seats by the windows. No one ever says it's a rule, and obviously it's not technically, but that's just how it always is, and everyone knows it. I glance again toward Ashlyn and Marigold and wonder briefly if one of them might toss me a glance that invites me to their table. But I get nothing, so I march toward a spot that seems like Switzerland. An empty table, generally in the 5th grade zone, but in a corner that's neutral enough. You don't want to sit with other people from our class? Jack asks as he slaps his tray down across from me. Like his desk, his tray is poorly organized. Utensils slide every which way, chili sloshes over the edge of the bowl, pooling on the red plastic. This is fine, I say. You can sit wherever you want, though. He shrugs. Nah, it's fine. You're the docent. We eat in silence for a few minutes. I keep my eyes on the tray, willing myself to disappear. Clearly, I don't succeed. Hey, Maple. Marigold's passing by on our way to the busing station. Sorry about this morning, she says, chewing her lower lip. She looks briefly at Jack, then back to me. I decide to be the bigger person. Your braids look nice. Thanks, she says with a rush of relief. So, how's 6th grade? Before Marigold can come up with an answer, Ashlyn appears behind her. Hey, she says, giving me a quick half smile. Come on, Marigold, we'll be late for math. Oh, right. Marigold looks apologetic-ish. You know, we have to switch classes now, so, right, I know. Switching classes was one of the things I had been looking forward to the most. Hearing the bell and having to pack your bag up and get out the door, maybe stopping off at your locker to pick something up like a high schooler. I try to make myself seem very nonchalant, like I barely even noticed that Marigold and Ashlyn are living the 6th grade life without me when we were supposed to do it together. See you later. Then they're gone, catching up with Lucy and Fatima and swishing off down the hall. Maybe he senses my discomfort, but Jack doesn't say anything for a minute. He just picks at his food. Finally, he takes a swig of milk and looks at me. Who are those girls? 6th graders? Yeah, I swallow sharply. Might as well tell him before he hears it from someone else. I used to be in their class. Oh, really? Jack seems confused. You mean you... I sigh. I'm going to really have to spell this out for him. I was supposed to be in 6th grade this year, but it got held back. The words still sting every time I have to say them out loud. My face burns. Seriously? You seem so smart, though. It buoys me for a minute, and then I remember the truth. I'm not smart. That thought, the one I've pushed out of my mind all summer long, creeps in and takes hold. Warm tears threaten to spill down my cheeks. I can feel them coming. Get back, tears. Don't be a baby. I scramble to regain control. Well, yeah, I say, it's actually kind of, well, I'm not really supposed to tell anyone this, but Ms. Littleton Chan kept me in 5th grade again to help her out. Jack's face crinkles up. As soon as the lie is out of my mouth, completely unplanned, it seems implausible. I rush to consider the details. Yeah, like a senior 5th grader. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but you can keep a secret, right? I mean, you're in the Foreign Service, right? Jack erases the frown from his brow and puffs up his chest. Sure, yeah, I'm good with secrets. Well, I'm like a special assistant to support other kids because there are a lot of kids in our class this year who need extra help and not enough teachers because of budget cuts. Oh, so that's why she asked you to be the docent, huh? Right, that makes sense. The story is coming together now in my head, just like stories always do. I might be bad at reading, but telling a good story, that I can do. I nod. Right, docent, special assistant, whatever you want to call it, a general support person, because they figured 6th grade would be a bit boring for me anyway. Jack stares at me. He doesn't say anything for a long moment, and I hold my breath, waiting to see if he's going to buy it. Finally, he shrugs. Okay. Just like that, I have a new identity. Jack might have a government operative for a mom, but now I'm basically a 6th grader hiding in the 5th grade, incognito. So I'll stop there.
Oh my goodness, I love that reading. Talk about like perfect, upper elementary / beginning of middle school vibes. That was like, oh, yes, the lunchroom. Yes.
It's the prime spot for middle school, right?
Absolutely. It's just, I know, it takes me right back. So I have to ask you, Kate, what inspired this story? It's a very interesting, idea of a smart kid being held back and all the kind of layers of embarrassment that she has to deal with.
Yeah, so the idea comes from a few places. Earlier in my career, when I was right out of college, actually, I started working for an organization in New York called the Harlem Children's Zone. And I was hired there to work as a reading specialist with students who were struggling with reading. I was really like, I was not trained as a reading specialist. I was kind of like a warm body almost, in that it was a new program. They had just opened their middle school and community center as part of the program. And there were a lot of kids who needed support, and they were pulling in a lot of people. And so I kind of got thrown in the deep end, and I was having to learn a lot as I went along about reading instruction and reading support. And I was really inspired by the kids who I met there, who were just, like Maple. They were just incredibly smart students. They were funny, they were lovely and kind, and they were great at a lot of things, but they struggled with this one aspect of their learning. And having those challenges with reading specifically ended up, I think, being a real barrier to them thriving in school, because it just made so many things difficult for them in school. And I think it made it hard in some ways for their teachers even to see like all of the gifts that they brought to school because they were struggling with accessing the material and all of this stuff. And so that was sort of a formative experience for me professionally. And I went on from there to work with students, middle school students, both in New York and in London, who struggled with reading for various reasons. And I came back to Boston, and I work in the education nonprofit space when I'm not writing. And so even though I'm no longer working with students, I am sort of immersed in this world of how do we support students and how do we support families and helping young people to thrive in school. And so those themes have been sort of really present for me. And this book in some ways is the first time that I've sort of brought those, like all of those different pieces of my work and sort of my day job and my writing life together. And part of the inspiration came honestly from my agent, who said to me, I haven't seen a book about a kid getting held back. And I think this is like really up your alley because of your work experience in education. And I was like, yeah, that really clicked for me. So that's where the book comes from.
Oh, fascinating. I have to say that when I first read the premise, I was wondering, how in the world did a child get to 5th grade not being able to read and get past kind of, not only the teachers, but also the parents. Like she has 2 loving parents. And, but I think that kind of the way that you write it, it makes sense because Maple is super smart. Like she's really, she loves stories. So she accesses stories in different ways, right? She has people read to her. And when she writes her own stories, she dictates them. So I definitely, I was like, I don't know how, whether it's believable or not, but then when I read the book, I was like, oh yeah, that's believable. I will say that in my own practice in medicine, I don't take care of children, I take care of adults. But when you think about like when people are having problems remembering things, or you're worried about dementia, there are people, if you are smart enough and well educated enough, you can disguise lots of things for a very long time before it becomes apparent that there is a problem. So I thought that was an interesting parallel there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that absolutely is a parallel. I think that Maple's hiding of her struggles with reading, the way that she hides it as she goes through school, is very deliberate on her part. And I think you're right. I think actually a lot of people have that question, right? Is this realistic? How does a kid get all the way to 5th grade without this being identified? And actually, when we were shopping the book around to different publishers, that's a piece of feedback that we got from several editors who said, I love the story, but I just don't think it's believable that she would get all the way to 5th grade. And that would be the first time that this would be noticed. And I think, we took that feedback. I did take that feedback on board, and I tried to strengthen those pieces of the book where we had to kind of explain what Maple was doing to hide this from. So for example, she talks about I get up to go to the bathroom at key moments in class when I think I might be asked to read something, or doing a lot of group work. I'm listening to what my classmates are saying, and then I'm just building on it so I don't actually have to read the stuff myself. Listening to stories instead of having to read them. Audiobooks, all of that stuff. Maple is making those choices to access stories and literacy so that she can kind of skirt the actual reading piece of it. And I think too, for Maple's family, it's almost like they don't notice because Maple is so into stories. It's almost like they don't expect it because she loves books. She loves reading, she loves listening. She talks about her dad reading aloud to her. And so it's almost like, it's a blind spot for them because they just think of her as a kid who loves books. And so of course she can read, So yeah, but I think that is it's a common question. And actually I I'd said this before in talking about this book, but the people who have read the book, who are reading interventionists, reading teachers, who specialize in working with students with dyslexia, those folks have not had that question. So for them, they are saying to me, this is absolutely realistic. And we also have the detail in the book about Maple's parents withholding her from some testing in school. So that's another place where, you know, this might have come out had she gone through some of the testing processes that kids do tend to go through in school, but her parents had deliberately kind of withheld her from that because they didn't want her participating. So, you know, there's some key details in the book to kind of sell that. But yeah, unfortunately, I think it happens more often than we'd like to think.
Yeah, I believe it. Changing topics a little bit. You previously wrote 2 wonderful, well-received YA novels. Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to write a middle grade novel this time?
Yeah, I mean, so there are a few reasons. One is, so I have written two novels for teenagers, and both of them are sort of heavy, or not sort of, quite heavy topics. They both involve illness and themes of mortality, and deal with teenagers who are either dealing with illness themselves or with in their families. And I wrote both of those books before I had kids of my own, and I found that both as a writer and as a reader, actually, since having children, my daughters are 4 and 1. I've noticed that my tolerance and desire to engage with stories like that, particularly around like mothers and children and illness and death, is I have a harder time dealing with that stuff. And so I was not in the mood to write another one of those kind of books, although I'm still drawn to those ideas. But I was just like, you know what, I think I need a break from those kind of themes. And so that was a piece of it. I wanted to write something a little bit lighter, which is not to say that Maple's story is like, you know, super lighthearted, but it certainly is lighter than those previous novels. And then the other piece of it was, I just love middle grade. I love middle grade books, and I think it's such a like rich time of life. Kids this age, I just think they're wonderful human beings. I think it's like the prime of life, like 8 to 12-year-olds, they're so wonderful. And that space between childhood and adolescence is so interesting. And so, yeah, I was drawn to writing a character in that age as well, because I felt like they're so sweet, and like that mix of being mature and moving toward independence, but still being kids is really appealing to me. I have an 11-year-old niece and nephew, and I like hanging out with them, so that was part of it too.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think middle grade is where my heart will always be. It's very pure, because you can address really difficult topics,
right.
Like, you know, I mean, what's really interesting to me is that Maple basically begins this story with kind of the worst thing in the world happening to her, which is that like she doesn't get to go on with her friends.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing. But she addresses it and you know, and of course, like she's telling not 100% the truth in that scene that you just read.
Right.
She's trying, because you know she's a kid, and she's basically at the mercy of what the adults in her life, you know, tell her she needs to do. So she's just trying her best, and she's super sweet. And I think I agree that but you also managed to put in a lot of funny kind of situations and funny details, and so I think that middle grade is that wonderful place where humor and heart meet. And and like they're not middle grade characters are not afraid to really just say what they mean, you know, and like really put their hearts out there and just say, okay, this is, you know, so I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of research did you put into dyslexia in particular, because that's what Maple is struggling with in this story?
Yeah. So like I said a little bit earlier, I work in the education nonprofit space. So one of the advantages that gives me is that I have a network of colleagues, former colleagues, current colleagues who know a lot more than I do about reading instruction, reading disabilities, dyslexia specifically. So I had a pool of people I could go to talk to. And I started talking to some folks really early on in the process about like, is this realistic? What would this look like? What would it look and feel like for Maple when she's trying to read? Dyslexia is a disability it's like a really broad diagnosis, right? So it can present in a lot of different ways. I think we think of it as just like when, you flip letters around, that sort of narrow idea of what it is. But in fact, it's very common and it presents in many different ways. So I wanted to make sure that Maple's experience of it was very realistic, but also know that it's only one kind of way of experiencing it. And there are going to be kids who are, experiencing dyslexia in many, many ways that do not look like Maple's experience. But I did want to make sure that I was capturing accurately what like one plausible, authentic experience of dyslexia would be like. And so I started off, like I said, talking to a lot of folks who just have years and years of experience working with students with dyslexia. And that was a really great jumping off point for me. And then, of course, I did a ton of reading. There's a website called understood.org, which is an incredible resource for parents and families and educators, all about students with disabilities of all kinds, learning disabilities of all kinds. And that was a really useful resource for me too. They have, like, for example, videos on there where you hear students talking about, this is what it feels like when I try to read. And, these are like some of the challenges that this presents for me in school and things like that. There was one video in there in particular of an 8th grade girl with dyslexia. And I just found her description of what it felt like for her to kind of try to get through reading in class was just really powerful to hear her describe it for herself. So I did a ton of research like that. And then once the book was kind of drafted, I also shared it back with a bunch of people to get their kind of feedback and make sure that I was capturing, like, for example, what the sessions with her reading interventionist would look like, what kinds of, exercises they would be doing in there. So I had a reading interventionist read the whole thing and give me feedback on it. So there were a bunch of different pieces of research in that way. But yeah, that certainly was an important piece of the drafting and revision process, was just making sure that the details were authentic and that it did capture accurately what that experience would be like for her.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I thought the details were really interesting and quite believable, and it gave you some pretty incredible insight into what somebody with this kind of disability might struggle with. It was, really well done. So Maple's family is a mixed ethnicity family, right? Her dad is Indian American and her mom is Jewish, and she has an adorable baby brother. So why do you think it's important to show families like this in books?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think we're in such an exciting moment in children's literature. We're seeing so many more experiences represented. We're seeing kids with all kinds of families, from all kinds of backgrounds, so many different voices and perspectives being reflected in the literature these days compared to when I was a kid. And that is so exciting to me. And I think it's important because obviously, on the one hand, all kinds of kids need to see themselves represented in literature. And then on the other hand, kids need to see experiences that are different from theirs represented in literature. And so both pieces of that, I think, are so critical, especially for young readers. And for me personally, like I said earlier, my husband is Indian American. I myself am half Jewish, so it's a little more complicated than Maple's family. Technically, our children are 1/4 Jewish; they are half Indian. But anyway, it was important to me to write a book where, when my daughters are old enough to read it, they'll open it and they'll say, "Oh, this looks like our family," and that they would know that their mom took the opportunity when I had it to write a story that reflected us and reflected who we were, and so that piece of it is important to me. I think that the other piece is that I think even in spite of all of the many, many different experiences we're starting to see reflected in children's literature, I think mixed race families are still probably a little bit less common. And in particular, I think it's not that often that we see mixed families in the story where the experience of them having that having the mixed family is not the center sort of issue of the book, right? So it's not a book about the challenges faced by a half Indian, half Jewish family. It's a book about something completely different. And Maple's identity is part of the book, but it's sort of in the background of it. And that was really important to me to write that too, because of course mixed kids have like all kinds of other things going on that that are distinct from their family's cultural backgrounds. So I wanted to put that out there too. And I think it's exciting to see more and more of these stories popping up. We see them in your books too. So that's we're definitely starting to see, I think, a more children's literature that's like more reflective of the real kids in the world.
Absolutely. I tell kids when I do school visits that part of what I'm trying to get across in my books is that none of us is just one thing. So we don't have to let any one thing define us. And, all the characters in my books are Indian American or Indian, but as you said, some of these books focus on things that have nothing to do with their cultural identity, but their cultural identity just informs the character. And some of my books are more focused on kind of navigating the worlds of either being an immigrant or, coming to a new place or just feeling different from other people. Yeah. But my first novel, Midsummer's Mayhem, has, a mixed ethnicity family as well, which is like my family, right? So I'm married to an Italian American man, and our kids are half Indian and half Italian American. Right, as I put it in the description, Mimi, my character in the book, her family is half Indian, half white, and all American. So I think that's important that our characters reflect not only our own families, but as you said, the world around us, right, where there are more and more children from mixed backgrounds. So yay. So what about what do you hope that young readers get from reading this book?
That's a great question. I think the big take-home message here is Maple is learning to love who she is. All the pieces of it, including her learning disability, including the fact that her brain works differently than other kids. And that is a strength of hers, right? I think she's learning to recognize that all of these pieces of her, including the things that she views as kind of deficits, are actually parts of what make her gifted and unique and wonderful, and things that she brings to her friends and her family that make her special. And so I think that's the big message that I hope readers take away, especially young readers. You may feel like something is really hard for you right now, or feel like you're not good at something, or something about you, there's something about you that you don't like. But in fact, all of these pieces of ourselves are things that we bring to the table that make us who we are and make us unique. And Maple, I think, has to, she takes the book to figure that out, and really kind of embrace all those pieces of herself. So I hope that readers take that away.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of literature does this for kids, but it's kind of, thinking about the things we struggle with and how they also make us distinct. Not only do they make us stronger, but they make us kind of better, because we've through that struggle, we've learned something about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And learned how to relate to other people and be compassionate and like be empathetic and all of that. And I think that's also another thing that I love about this age and love about writing for this age. It's just a really rich age for all of that stuff to kind of be happening for kids. So.
Absolutely. Well, I've had such a wonderful time talking to you, Kate.
Me too. Thank you so much, Rajani.
Thank you. Suman, are you ready to take us away?
I'm here. Here. I was backstage enjoying all this conversation, and it's going to be a treat for young readers. And I'm, as I said, I can't wait for my kid to. I'm going to order on all these books, and they're available on Bookshop and Amazon. So look up these authors online, follow them on Instagram. Thank you both for joining us today and having this conversation, taking that time and effort. And when I get the book, we'll have offline conversations, much more in detail. And can't wait to have all of us read it. And thank you. Have a wonderful evening. And look forward to see you and other editions of the Lit Fest. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We are concluding our literary festival on December 12th, which is tomorrow. We have a fantastic in-person event with Cal Penn, who's come up with his book, You Can Be Serious, and it's at the DAG in Midtown Manhattan. And our tickets are up on our website. We have our Eventbrite link if you have not gotten a ticket yet. So go ahead and do that. And I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. And have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.